You're watching The Fourth Estate on NTV. My name is Alan Kasuja. My guest, Vincent Chamadidi, Member of Parliament, Chris Obore, journalist, and of course, Frank Tumeba is a Member of Parliament, and Angelo Izama, journalist. Now, there is, Angelo, you describe Bukoto South politics
as
gutter politics. You know, we saw people being beaten. We saw people who said they'd been beaten. Let me rephrase that. And we also saw gun-wielding men riding in a matatu without number plates on it, with sticks, and even the chairman of the Electoral Commission, Badru Chigundu, is on record as having said that he witnessed some of these incidents. What does that say about the maturity or lack of maturity as far as the politics of this country is concerned?
Well, it says everything, but like I said, you know, Bukoto South is like the poster child of how or what a bad election looks like. Like Honorable Frank was saying, you know, there's tribalism involved, bribery, voter intimidation, people with guns, and all state institutions were there, present, by the way. Now you have to ask yourself why the police and the Electoral Commission, you know, are poor arbiters of political competition to show you how bad this election was. Of course, my problem was with the quality of candidates, who also are some of the worst people's representatives that a constituency can ever wish for. With friends like these, really, Bukoto South doesn't need enemies, you know. But beyond that, this involvement of the security services in negatively, it's another challenge for Ugandan elections. Of course, once we are into the presidential election, which has got elements of, you know, political transition in Uganda, this is a major issue. You know, whether the military will be out of politics in the near future, and whether the police can have, you know, public confidence restored in it. I see that the withdrawal of public confidence in the police, because people don't consider them, they consider them as partisan actors, as one of the major challenges of Uganda's electoral system. But
Chamadidi, Vincent, do you support civilians in taxis, in unmarked taxis, wielding guns, intimidating voters? Is that the sort of politics that your party should be portraying? Does that add value to you people?
I first of all strongly condemn all acts of hooliganism orchestrated by whoever, whether within my party or opposition. But I want to mention straight away that you may not even know who has a gun now. The other day in Parliament, we are raising this question of IDs and even proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Do you know even members of opposition have guns? Do you know members of opposition, even there were goons that were attacking Naduli? You think those were of NRM?
But those are not,
I mean, we are saying, you are talking about,
let's not mix up the facts.
Excuse me, Aaron. You are talking about stick wielding goons, then you are talking about those with guns. Let me tell you, there is no law in Uganda that stops even a member of opposition from holding a gun. Now that the gun was with a person who had no uniform, you cannot even know he was from which security agency.
Is that the tactic you employ?
It's not a tactic, but I am saying in Uganda today, what we see is the highest level of lawlessness from either NRM or opposition. And the reasons are there. One of them is that when a country degenerates into lawlessness, it has no moral authority to demand for its citizens to obey the law.
Well, so your president is presiding over a lawless.
I mean, this is exactly what happened.
This is according to your colleague.
Well, I take that with a pinch of salt. But back to Bukoto. Back to Bukoto.
Right.
You know, it takes two to tango.
Okay, sorry. Let me before you talk about Bukoto. You are an RDC before, and I don't know if this was actually.
I was a deputy RDC.
Yeah. Was this something that was done at that level?
You see, an RDC is your head of security in the district.
Right.
You are actually against insecurity. You are. If I was another DC, that can't happen in my district.
Okay,
and you can go and ask people like Katuntu. He was in I think either UPC then, whatever. FDC wasn't there. We had a good time with them, much as we never agreed with them ideologically. But back to the point, it takes two to tango. To have a messy election, before you even blame the arbiters, the impartial umpires, the police and the Electoral Commission, you the candidates on either side,
and really, the supporters
and your supporters play a crucial role. Point number one, this election of Bukoto was really a tight one. it was a Kibaki Odinga kind of election, to be very honest. By last evening, one camp was claiming lead, another one lead, another one lead. So actually the election commission, to me, I think I should say kudos to Kigundu for being able, amidst that, to determine and guard the people's will. You get the point? And that's why sometimes when I become a little bit annoyed when people unfairly discredit the electoral commission when it has delivered victories for whatever side under whatever circumstances. Because really the conduct of Ugandans, the conduct of our citizens is even influenced by ourselves. But he makes a very strong important point. You also looked at the behavior, and this has been repetitive of opposition politicians. You are Namboze. You are Sijui Kasivante.
What were they doing that was
What were they doing? What were they doing?
The same thing the president
Not
was doing
at
there.
all.
No, he was not on election day.
The president went there, campaigned for the candidate. On election day, campaigns have been closed. Why do you have to come simply because you are Namboze, who is always on Kabozi in the media? You think you can intimidate people and paralyze voting?
No, come on, that's not our intention. Maybe to protect the votes.
Was he an appointed agent? Was she an appointed agent of candidate Matthias?
So members of parliament from other areas should keep away from I don't understand what you're trying to
come in a very regulated manner. If I choose to go to Bushenyi to campaign for NASA, and I have been appointed to be his agent at Ishaka polling station.
At Bunyarji, like I was.
Yes. I come with a letter. There are rules of the game. I don't come to cause commotion. You saw a poor lady, a polling official on your TV here, making a phone call.
Come and help us.
Come and help us.
Yeah.
So the behavior of our leaders will automatically call for certain actions.
Okay, fair enough. But before we leave this subject and move on to the Congo, I'd like to ask you, Chris, what is the solution to this whole drama we see? Can we have
maybe I should put my own question to Chris, but
Yeah.
why are elections so important? I mean, in the last election was one of the most expensive in Uganda's history. Why are politicians
I just
other
think why
people-
elections are important.
Yeah, why are people putting so much value that they are
to
willing
winning.
to risk money, influence, beating of
People
voters,
to
all
choose
those
whom
things?
they
Why-
want.
Why have
Is
this
it really
been
down to
raised,
people choosing whom they want?
high?
Democracy is very expensive.
Because these two gentlemen have not found any other means to put bread on their tables other than coming to parliament. It's only parliament which pays you
But
for
Frank
30
is a
days.
highly qualified professional.
He has never entered a classroom. He only went there for teaching practice. He has never known how to teach because he did not think that he could survive without free money. So he had to go to parliament.
Even if I sold my Matoke,
Leave alone.
even if I sold
leave that alone. He's a teacher by profession.
yes, of
And
math
he-
and physics.
No, the point.
You keep saying
and-
that.
and
the
me-
point.
and
The
me-
point.
What are you
and-
doing?
and-
What's your
and me-
profession?
Don't divert me from the point
And
you
me-
must make.
Hey.
Listen.
Okay, we'll make your
Listen,
point.
listen.
We are
So-
attracted by this free beast in the parliament. Now, our taxpayers' money. The issue for Bukoto South, the elections in Uganda, the stick-wielding people are a result of the kind of politics we practice. The strongest arm of politics in Uganda is the military. It's only been able to be suppressed for international reasons, and they don't come out until they are called to. So in the case of Bukoto South, I told you how the president is not well informed of what is actually on the ground. So he goes there expecting to boost a candidate. And the security apparatus who
What
know
does the NRM need to do to change all this?
to do that, first of all, NRM needs to first of all to be honest enough to themselves that there are situations which are very difficult. The MPs from Masaka in Buganda did not want Alintuma Sambu.
But were they voters?
The president
Exactly.
went ahead and ignored that.
We are
So
the
you can see,
voters.
other than Namboze, all even the NRM MPs in Buganda were not for Alintuma Sambu. This should have been
Actually,
an issue.
somebody in Siroko with a cap, with a DP
but-
cap
but
on his
Y-
head.
Listen,
Some interjection, Obore. Some a humble one.
you take me as speaking
Okay.
when I'm giving you the facts you want to interrupt.
Okay.
So if your
Much
own
obliged.
NRM MPs
Yes.
are saying
Yes.
His Excellency, this man is not for us, he will not win. Why then do you go and back the same person?
Yeah, but you see,
so
my point.
what is coming out to clear here is
Yes.
you are going to see in Kasese, Winifred Kiza beating NRM over the same issues. Why? Because now the president has been reduced into this person being pulled by every NRM member. It is a problem. So tomorrow,
If you're the president's advisor,
I see the president even intervening in family affairs. You know, who has not bought his wife a birthday gift? Police, honorable
That's
president, come.
diversionary.
No, because everything in NRM must be sold by the president.
Let me help you. Let me help you.
Make your point.
Yes,
really
You
clear.
yes.
buy a garment for
see-
your wife, you call the
Okay,
president.
that aside, I don't want to engage in that. You see, true, some MPs who are NRM in Masaka were opposed to the idea of Alintuma Nsambu, primarily because of not being a resident person in that constituency. But they could have also been proved wrong if Alintuma Sambo had won.
Has he won?
Yeah, and you say, wait a moment. It's not it's Alintuma lost by 1,400 votes. You get the point?
Politics is like a football.
So,
if you have not scored, you have not scored.
Now listen to me. The fact that NRM had a presence in that traditional DP stronghold, and we managed to reduce the popularity of DP to that margin of 1,400. For me, I would thank Alintuma for holding our flag and for making sure that in 2016 we have a starting point.
That's a fair point.
Beaten in confusion. You don't need problems in NRM.
Okay,
we'll take lessons.
Let's switch our attention a little bit, gentlemen, to the situation with the Congo. Now, as it turns out, the rebels have taken over 6 towns. This is as of today. UN helicopters have been shelling rebel positions, and of course, we need to find out whether the Eastern DRC, as it is right now, is a viable entity, so to speak. Now, let me just find out from you, Angelo, first of all. What is your latest information as far as that whole DRC situation is concerned? Because I know that that's an area that you're particularly interested in. The whole, what is going on as far as you're concerned, as a scholar looking in or as a journalist looking in?
Well, the stakes are very high because, okay, first of all, let me say this. Eastern Congo is worth fighting for. For those of us who are in the East African community, it remains a very important piece of not just territory, but it's an important constituency that in the future you hope to integrate, into our expanding community. That and, of course, South Sudan. But that said, the stakes in Eastern Congo are very high, largely because of its resources and its strategic position. Now, as you've heard, a lot of what is really appearing in the news is the gymnastics of the geopolitical question that Eastern Congo raises. Right now, people are, of course, on 2 sides. Either you are those who are seen as pro M23 are also seen as pro Rwanda, and there's another faction that sees the situation in Goma particularly as the last standing point. That the forces concentrated there are the ones that are anti-Rwandese and anti-M23. The UN has taken positions, not surprisingly.
But one thing I'm very curious about is that everybody else seems to be assuming or taking blame for the havoc in the Congo, apart from Kabila, who's sitting in Kinshasa.
Kabila's strategy and that of other Congolese politicians is to allow the situation in the East to essentially be defined by this argument that problems in the East are caused by outsiders. That's why they don't invest in the effective control of the area. There are various militias that are in charge of various parts of the East, both the north and the south of Eastern Congo. You've seen the quality of soldiers that have been placed in the East. Most people are of the opinion that the Congolese army is not just unprofessional. They are also predating on the people. They're just like any other militia. So for Kabila, that argument that the East is under constant threat of invasion, particularly by Uganda and Rwanda, sort of suffices. But I am not.
And he's interested in propagating such an argument?
Yes, because it serves him. It serves him. It doesn't. It kind of passes the buck for the responsibility in the East. Look, the real tragedy here is the civilians that have come in large numbers into Frank Tumwebaze's constituency. That is really the ugly face of the situation in the Congo. And
are they welcome in your constituency?
Well, that's a different matter. You see, as a country, we have serious obligations towards refugee, the convention. Only that as a country, we have a very bad refugee policy. That's why we had clashes, perhaps, with the responsible ministry. But that I don't want to discuss today. But I want to pick on from what Angelo said. To me, in that whole saga, I have a serious issue to take with the UN. The UN has had a more than permanent presence in that part of Congo.
Since 1960.
Perhaps than Rwanda, perhaps than Uganda. And instead of analyzing the situation and defining correctly what is the interest of Rwanda in the form of a threat from that area, what is the interest of Uganda in the form of a threat from that area, and what should the domestic government in Kinshasa do to make sure that its own territory is not a sanctuary for other people's enemies, they now end up issuing reports that divide Congo and Rwanda further and make unnecessary accusations. To me, the UN should have long ago told Kabila and the neighboring countries to come for dialogue. Because look at the claim of Rwanda as well as Uganda. When you hear General Rwanda telling you that ADF is reorganizing, where is it reorganizing?
In the Congo.
From that part of the Congo. Where is the extreme Hutu Interahamwe FDR? In that part of the Congo. So for you to take away the excuse of Rwanda, assuming it was unfounded, to take away the excuse of Uganda, assuming it was unfounded, then govern your place fully. You MONUC that has been there for years and years, for you really to justify, President Kagame rightly told them they have a budget that triples Rwanda's budget or maybe 10 times.
1.2 billion.
So honestly, they should provide a solution. Even for them to join the poor and motivated Kabila forces to fight at the M23, who 2 weeks ago were part of the same Kabila army. Tomorrow there could be M24 out of the same army. So to me, really, the problem is the international police, the UN, failing to recognize that dialogue of all the players on table will come. And to me, that's why I told you on the last show that the solution will come from the dialogue of the Great Lakes region, from the dialogue of the East Africa, to make sure that even if Congo...
And from Congolese sorting out their problems.
Exactly. Even if Congo was split into 1 or 2 other countries, like the Southern Sudanese did, it has to come through a kind of like Nairobi Accord.
Okay. You know, we will return very shortly, and the resident diplomat, believe it or not, it's Obore here.
Diplomat? That's too
He's
much.
going to throw in some weight. He's going to give us some sort of idea as to how this matter can be resolved.
Diplomat.
You're watching The Fourth Estate on NTV. Good evening.